Tell us about going to the White House and what that screening was like.
Amazing. Our dear president came in and met with us before the film, and was absolutely wonderful and so complimentary of the film. And he's had the girls read the book and everything, which was so great. Wow, what an honor to meet our president. He was just really lovely.
That's so great. So you got this part, but you weren't an actress at the time. You were 9 years old when you got the part. How did that all come about?
My mom had been an actress with the local town and gown theater. They had heard about the movie people coming to Birmingham. So James Hatcher, who was head of the little theater, called my mom and said, well, maybe you should bring little Mary down. And she's about the right age and the coloring is right. And so my mother had to go ask my father and get permission from him to bring me in. And of course, my dad said no. My mom had Daddy totally wrapped, and she's like, now, Henry, dear, what are the chances the child will get the part anyway? Monroeville had changed so much. There were, a lot of the homes had been torn down, and there were wires and paved streets and that sort of thing. But I think also that it wouldn't have been safe for them to make the film there. I was very, very sheltered. But what you have to understand is times were very different then. We had a little black and white television set that sat on the kitchen table, and it was only turned on for weather. And back then, we only had 2 stations, and they weren't even on all day. And the rest of the time, it was just fuzz. How many of you remember that, It's like, today, and this is what's hard when I talk to the school kids, because, today we have 24-hour, 7 days a week, nonstop news. And we didn't have that. And the things that were going on down in Birmingham in the city, we had no knowledge of it, as to what was going on. And I'm sure even if they did, they kept us well away and kept us safe. I didn't find out a lot of things that went on in Birmingham until I read a schoolmate's book, Diane McWhorter's book, Carry Me Home. It's one of the best histories written of my city, Birmingham, Alabama. And I was in New York doing some school kids there from what they call a last chance school. These kids had been in scrapes with the law, and they introduced them to To Kill a Mockingbird and had them read the book and showed the film. And the gal that I was staying with was good friends with Diane, and she said, I have a surprise for you in that Diane McWhorter is going to be here, and she has come to see you. And so I was very excited to see Diane. I hadn't seen her for years. And in talking with her about the book, I became very nervous because I had heard some things at home. There were people that were very upset with what Diane had written, and we're all in there. Everybody is in there, and all the families that I had grown up with. And I went to Diane and I said, was Daddy a good guy or a bad guy? Where was he in all this? And she said, I never read anything but good things about your father, and all the people that I talked to had nothing but positive things to say. I was like, that's a big relief. They had decided to do the film all on the back lot of Universal Studios. And Henry Bumstead, who was our wonderful set designer, had found period houses that were being torn down to make way for, I believe it was one of the freeways. And so he had all these houses sent to the studio and drew up these wonderful plans for this village. Oh, I was doing a Vanity Fair shoot some years later, just a few years back, and my driver was so excited. He said, "Well, I'm a tour guide here at Universal, and we go to your street. We get requests for that a lot." So I was like real excited. I was like, "Oh, this is great," you know. So the car pulls up and comes to a stop, and he says, "How does it feel to be home?" And like, I'm looking around and I don't recognize anything. And I started to cry. And when I got out of the car, one of the guys realized what had happened, and he came over and put his arm around me. He said, "They didn't tell you, did they?" And I said, "No." And he said, "One of the guards became disgruntled about something, and he burned most of the back lot down, and your house was one of the first that he torched." So what you see over there at Universal is only partially what we had.